What is up, everyone? Welcome to this week's NerdBall Fantasy Football Show. I am your humble host and dendrologist specializing in the conservation of the endangered Robert Woods, an astronaut aboard the Pitts 8 Moon Expedition, Pete Rogers. And I am joined today by some of the nerds. We have resident old man, vice secretary of the Sam Darnold Hype Train Railroad LLC, and new fitness trainer to Dalvin Cook and his deltoids, Clark Barnes. And founder and lone member of the Devontae Adams' Average Club and devout follower of the Anthony Lynn running back gospel, the Ginger Woodsman, Nick Bodford. Guys, how are we doing today?
Doing great, Pete.
Good, Pete. I like that in the span of like a couple months, I've gone from hating Anthony Lynn more than anybody else to now being like, hey, actually, we should use this to our...
I know. It's quite the about face. And now Devontae Adams is your number one wide receiver again with the recent news today. I got to re-update your niches, Nick, because you have completely, destroyed all my fun little narratives I had constructed for you.
Clark, hit me with the joke.
No, I love listening to what Pete is going to call us at the beginning of the show. I hope other people like it too, but I love it.
I figure it's just a nice way to keep a running record of the hills that we are on and the hills we're not on. But of course, now Nick has destroyed all of my fun narratives that I create for him. Yeah, the listeners, this is good for Clark. Guy's a good point. Listeners should know that you guys have no say in what I deem as nicknames for you guys. It's entirely my own creation. So I like to try to pigeonhole everyone into little narratives that I've constructed for them.
It's the best form of government on the planet, Pete. You're a fair dictator. I'll take it.
Thank you. That's what I'm here for. And yeah, awesome. Well, we have lots to talk about. It is wide receiver week, like it has been positional weeks for the last 2 weeks at NerdBall. So make sure you're checking that out on the site, nerdballff.com. But before we get into that, we have so much NFL news to get to. So let's hit the music and do that right now. And to start, the headline of the news is what was going down today, broke today on Monday, and that is Aaron Rodgers officially back. This is big news, not just for fantasy football, not just for NFL, but this is really big news. The biggest news, in fact, for Nick and Clark, because they had a wheel bet on this. Nick claimed that, let me see the exact verbiage, is Aaron Rodgers will not be the Packers quarterback in week one. Now, week one is not here. So there is still hope for Nick that he has not lost this wheel bet. But it seems pretty conclusive that Aaron Rodgers, after agreeing to a reworked deal with the Packers, is back for 2021. Now, there's a lot of the details of this, I would still say, are kind of fuzzy. And I did my best to read kind of through Schefter's tweets and parse it all together. But it seems like the main crux of this that Rodgers ultimately wanted was, one, he has free reign to go wherever he wants at the end of this season. So at the end of the 2021-2022 season, his 2023 year of his contract has been voided. He cannot be tagged. He gets to choose where he goes at the end of this year. It could be still with the Packers, but he now has that agency to choose where he goes. And the other one is that he's supposed to have, I guess, now more say in the team in terms of addressing some of the holes that he feels like are a part of it, which, according to Trey Wingo, means the Packers are trading for Randall Cobb because that's what Aaron Rodgers has been missing, I guess. I don't know. Ultimately, I was poking fun at Nick about, Rodgers is back. You can trust now that the Packers offense is going to look like what we have seen in 2020, in the sense that you draft Devontae Adams as a top 3 wide receiver, et cetera, Aaron Jones, all those guys, what this Packers offense looks like. But Nick, this does bring up the question, what kind of moves maybe Rodgers feels like are in store for this Packers team, or at the very least, looking towards the future, where is Rodgers maybe keeping tabs on or moving to in 2022?
I like Josh Norris tweeted out that the David Tepper of the Carolina Panthers is gonna offer just a blank check to him, and he added the Disney movie poster from blank check with Mr. McIntosh has $1 million, and yeah. Anyway, that was great. I think the Panthers are should be top of the list after what we saw with Tepper this year, where they gave Teddy a bunch of money the year before. It turned out he was not the guy.
We're done.
And he just told the GM, nope, done. Get rid of him. Let's go to Darnold, see what he can do. It's pretty clear how that team is going to be run. And the reverberations from that would be so interesting because, like, if Darnold has a decent season, Joe Brady would be very much in line for a head coaching gig. But if within the building, if Tepper calls up Brady and he says, come to my office, I want to talk to you about 2022. I am going to offer Aaron Rodgers more money than he could count. Will you stay one more year? And because like whatever they can do with Darnold in-house in Carolina,
right?
Extrapolate that to having Aaron Rodgers there. Whatever job Joe Brady was going to be considered for 2022 is not going to be better than steroids.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. Whatever 2023 would. Yeah. So the ramifications are massive.
You get Tom Brady versus Aaron Rodgers twice a year, if for however long he still is in there, which is like the people have been begging for that. And it would be wildly exciting to watch.
And they're somehow both still in their prime.
And they're somehow both in their prime. Yeah.
But I'd put the Panthers up there. We can't discount the Broncos, but I think the Panthers are at the top.
Yeah. Clark nods along, knowing that nothing will ultimately happen, and then Aaron Rodgers will return to the Packers.
Oh, I think Nick and I were in agreement that next year
he's gone.
Rodgers is gone.
Yeah.
And this has all been news not news up to this point.
Yeah. Well, at least now we can confidently draft the Packers offense. We know what to anticipate in fantasy, which is good.
I do want to pick a fight with Clark here on that point. And I forgot the way that he phrased it. So I'm just.
And I forgot the fight I was going to pick. So,
but it's basically like everyone's kind of right with this one. Aaron Rodgers is coming back next year, and he's doing so under the terms that he can leave immediately next year. So I don't think that this was all like non-news up until this point. It was further clarifying the fact that he fucking hates this place and just money. And the money has nothing to do with it. Enough to have brought him back. What brought him back were the developments that albeit Rappaport is the one who reported on like the specifics of why things thawed, so to speak, and that's the concessions to him were made. I don't think that was always part of the narrative. I think a lot of the narrative was Rodgers is a diva or Rodgers can't not play. He's too in love with football, whatever. We got. Like, I think the answer is finally here now. The dude really wasn't going to play unless he got his way. He got his way, and now he's only going to play for 1 year.
I'm very curious to see what his way is.
Yeah.
Clark is just thrilled because now the Packers are going to have to trade a first-round pick for Randall Cobb to the Houston Texans.
Kind of my general take on a lot of the news is that it is people pontificating upon pontifications because we have 2,000 news outlets that are 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And whether or not someone's just trying to get clicks or whether they think a story is actually interesting and has potential to happen, all these stories run the gamut from just absolutely nonsense that we created just to have a story to talk about versus like true, real investigative journalism of investigating things that could happen. It's so hard to tell, what the story is. But with this one, not because I'm so bright or anything, I just determined from the beginning, like Aaron Rodgers has to play this year. There's no way that he can't play.
Put a wheel on it.
He's not going to retire. That was the option. Either he's going to play or retire. He's not going to retire. So he might throw a little hissy fit through his agent, which when we had nothing to talk about in the offseason was made into news. And I was like, this is not news. And it turns out, to my perspective, like we knew all along, this is not news. Unlike another story that came out today, where, now it seems like 10 people have gone to the police regarding Deshaun Watson. I consider that a legitimate development in that story. Whereas we had almost no police involvement before. Now people are going to the police for this matter. Like that's just one example of kind of news versus not news in my brain. And that, new news with Deshaun Watson has made me really consider my point with him of like, oh, of course he's playing this year. Well, maybe not actually, because we had Well, again, I'm not trying to like mock any of my detractors, certainly not Nick, but like that's not news. That's really news versus like, oh, it turns out Aaron Rodgers is going to play. Yeah, we knew that. We knew that all the time.
Yeah, Clark, there's no love lost between you and I and the lying dirty news media sickos that we can't stand. But to the point about Deshaun
what
Watson,
is this podcast becoming?
Well, yeah, Clark and I have always teased that this will become
this
a
is the news
podcast.
segment, and we're just spending it shitting on news. I love it.
Just a small
Certain
point of clarity
news.
from
Certain
what I
news.
read on
Certain
the ESPN Watson piece was that there are 8 people who have come to the police, or no, it's 8 who have testified now or given their statements, and there are 2 more that they're trying to talk with. And that is massive. It's really interesting actually following up. We should move on. I understand that. It is interesting following up like the reports last week that the NFL had chosen not to put Watson on the exempt list, and with this breaking today, that could change.
We'll segue because there's 2 quick points. One, to Clark's your point, and I'm going to play Jordan here since he's not here to talk about this. It's not a coincidence that Adam Schefter started breaking all of this Aaron Rodgers news at 4 p.m. when he was on NFL Live. I mean, his first tweet of like Aaron Rodgers and the Packers are agreeing to a deal at like 3:55, and it's like more on at 4 p.m. So I'm sure that news was old, and he saved it to break it for the show. Following or as a transition to the Deshaun Watson news, it feels a little odd that today, along with these police reports that have come out, today the news broke that the Texans are listening to trade offers for Deshaun Watson now, after very firmly being like, we are not listening to trade offers. So that also is a kind of a seemingly a strange coincidence in my mind that with these reports becoming more with police becoming involved in this situation with Deshaun Watson and these sexual abuse charges, that now the Texans are kind of maybe listening to trade conversations, which is
Pete, this might be Houston, and I know I'm fucking speculating here, but this might be Houston kind of responding, because last week, late in the week, there was the report that the Eagles were like hot on the trail of a trade for Watson. And now it's interesting development. The police involvement comes up. I mean, we knew that Houston PD was investigating it, but the news breaks and then they follow that up with actually, we're now willing to listen. Yeah. Right. It's interesting.
So again, will a trade happen? Who knows? In that sense, I think that it is very, I think
y'all just, in my opinion, I think y'all jumped to the most interesting story to come out of all of this is who is Aaron Rodgers going to play for next year?
Yeah.
Boy,
it's going to be
reckless speculation begin.
It's going to be wild because it's going to be Tom Brady on steroids. Tom Brady's free agency, just like on even more so, in my opinion.
It's going to be more interesting. Like, totally. The Panthers next year. I mean, can you imagine Robbie Anderson like in the second round? If he has like a decent year this year with Sam Darnold,
beating hard with Christian McCaffrey out of that backfield. I mean, but like also the Broncos are super well situated. Like that offense would also be absolutely gorgeous with Rodgers. The Eagles,
gross.
There was one other team. What's the other team that? Oh, I guess the Raiders. No, I don't like that. Unless Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers both go to the Raiders, then I like that. Then I'm a fan of that.
It's like every team in the NFL except for like 3.
Oh, yeah.
Like the Seahawks are good. Tampa Bay is probably off the list,
God, what if Tampa Bay just dumps Brady and signs Rodgers?
Well, Miami wanted Watson. They tried to trade for
they've been
Watson.
trying to trade for Watson for a while.
Yeah,
them and the Eagles seem like the top tier in that. All right, let's move on in the news to some fantasy relevant stuff. So last week, it broke that Michael Thomas underwent ankle surgery back in June, and because of that, he will be out to start the year. Now, according to Nick Underhill for the Saints, typically it's a 4-month recovery period, which means likely end of September is his return. But I've also, and I'm sure our resident Twitter doctor, Nick Butterford, can tell us more, but I've seen a lot of different reports as to it's like an indefinite timeline. It could be, I've seen October, I've seen November. He's starting. The Saints have put him on the PUP list to start. It's a high ankle. Well, it is the same ankle that kept him out most of last year. He suffered a high ankle sprain. That's not an easy thing to recover from. So Clark, obviously we had on our Slack channel a whole debate about where Michael Thomas ultimately should be ranked for this year. I know you had some good points. So what is your feeling with, as the dust has kind of settled and maybe we have a clearer sense of what Thomas's future might be in 2021? What is your feeling on him for fantasy this year?
Yeah, so I like to kind of establish the universe to help make decisions. I used to do risk assessment, and so you figure out like what is the best case scenario, what's the worst case scenario, and then what are the odds that each of those things are going to happen. So working with Patty Cooper and you guys in the chat, I think we came down to best case scenario is he comes back week 4. And that is that he had his surgery at the very beginning of June and has 0 setbacks, maybe week 4. Patty, I think, was more accurate saying their bye is week 6. So maybe he comes back week 7. That gives him a couple of extra weeks. Maybe he didn't have the surgery on June 1st, yada, yada. If anything goes wrong, it's week 10. It's week 11. And even though I love Michael Thomas, and before this news was on record on this podcast saying he's just horribly undervalued and what is everyone thinking, now he moves to undraftable for me because you can't wait around for 8, 9, 10 weeks unless, you can get him in the 15th round and then slip him on your IR. Well, then we're not even discussing really drafting him right at that point. This has really made me consider how I think about wide receivers and ankle injuries. I don't want to overcorrect because I was blind to something, but in our podcast last week talking about running backs, one of the reasons I'm fading Dalvin Cook is because he's had so many shoulder dislocations, and those have a really high recurrence rate amongst running backs. If any of you have never watched football, running backs hit other players with their shoulders constantly, right? So that's an injury you want to be looking out for. And one of the things that we hate with wide receivers is when they have a high ankle sprain in the season or have these lower leg issues. With a lot of these big, tall gazelle-like wide receivers, this follows them for their career. So, I don't think it's an overreaction to say Thomas is undraftable. I would hold on to him in Dynasty. You're not going to get anything for him, and he could come back after a year and still contribute. But for this year, just not interested. And then something that I'm really just a personal growth moment, I think I really need to start watching kind of bigger, taller wide receivers who seem to have these recurring ankle injuries over and over.
Yeah. No, I think you said that all very well, Clark. I think that and if you kind of play out the scenarios that it could occur, you ultimately come to the conclusion that, like, for me, Michael Thomas isn't worth spending a pick on. If new reports come once the season starts, that maybe he's coming earlier, then it's, use your top waiver wire on him. Like, go get him, spend a bunch of fab on him, because if he does come back earlier, he's going to walk into such a huge workload. And even then we might have a clearer idea of what this Saints offense looks like, whether or not it's Jameis Winston or Taysom Hill. But for right now, I have him ranked as my wide receiver 60, just because I was like, I dropped my top 60 wide receivers on NerdBall today. And I was like, we'll have a nice, clean, even 60, but I wouldn't draft him.
Yeah, this has huge ramifications for, like, I don't know, 3 or 4 rounds in the draft. Like, Kamara shoots up now that he's going to have way more goddamn work. Adam Troutman is probably going to be asked to block more because he's got to, like, stay in line to help this. We might actually see, like, 2 running backs get a ton of work. I know that there are a lot of backfields. It's been a common conversation on Twitter since this news has occurred. But, like, there's a lot of backfields where, 2 backs are supposed to get enough work, and then either one gets it or 2 just kind of neuter each other. And, like, Latavius Murray is now a really good draft pick. I think this significantly reduces the likelihood that Jameis Winston is, like, a significant starter for this team. Yeah. He might start some games, but they're gonna want to play ball control. They're not going to try to air it out with Winston, with Marquez Callaway and Traquan Smith leading the way. Maybe
Chris Hogan. You can't forget about recently signed lacrosse star Chris Hogan.
Right. Maybe Peyton will galaxy brain us, but, like, they've got one of the best offensive lines in football. They've got a really good defense. I think that they're going to try to play control the clock ball, and Kamara is going to take a shit ton of snaps as a wide receiver. Like, he's never gonna leave the goddamn field. I moved him up to, like, running back 4 or 5 today. He probably needs to go to number 3, and that's worrisome, right? Like, we had that incredible quote from Evan Silva 2 years ago where he got Sean Payton was hammered at the combine and told him that he thinks Alvin's soft. Like, who knows how that's going to play out too. But I think Kamara is a big value. I think Latavius Murray is a big value. Dr. Edwin Flores, I mean, he's like the most accessible guy on Twitter who puts just free injury content out on his timeline. A soccer study involving this specific surgery found that the average return to play date was 103 days after surgery. We have to plus or minus 28 days for that, right? Like,
right.
Because we got the month of June.
June. We don't know when in June.
So, I mean, the dude could come back in October. He could come back in November, but it's not just like Michael Thomas, who has not been able to work out.
Right.
All this time. I mean, he's going to stay fit, but like he can't do football things. And the soft tissue injury rate of players who don't experience what's referred to as the ramp up period, which is just preseason games, slowly acclimating your body to crashing into human beings like you're in a car. I mean, he's not going to get to experience that. So where to draft Michael Thomas? I don't know. Late as goddamn hell. And maybe you can put him on your IR spot, like Clark said, but it's totally possible that this guy is not available till like week 15. And what are you going to do if he hasn't played until then?
Right. And it's the fantasy playoffs week 14, and Thomas is coming back for his first game. And that's why I really, at first I was optimistic, maybe 4 weeks, but then you just spend more time thinking about it. You're like, ugh, no.
Yeah.
So, and to contextualize this, okay, great. They get to play the Jets in week 14. We're not concerned about that. They got Tampa Bay after that, and then the Dolphins. I mean, we're talking one with Tampa Bay, one of the most loaded overall defenses there is, and then Dolphins, their entire salary cap is built around their secondary.
Right.
This is, it's not a fan, and I guess we got to account for the week 17 where they got the Panthers, but like those 2 weeks before that are not fantasy-friendly matchups. And I know it's Michael Thomas, but was he going to be who's he going to be catching passes from? Taysom Hill, Jameis Winston.
Yeah, no, there's lots up in the air there. The injury is terrible thing from a fantasy perspective. Obviously, also sucks for Michael Thomas and Saints and the Saints just because it completely derails the 2021 season and seeing what this offense could and maybe would be. All right, let's finish up the news with a trade that went down this weekend. Anthony Miller, Chicago Bears sent to the Houston Texans, probably because Randall Cobb's going to get traded back to Aaron Rodgers for 100 first-round picks, so they needed another slot receiver. Anthony Miller hasn't done a whole lot of much in Chicago in his couple of years there, but has been is still a serviceable wide receiver. I know Nick completely thought that, oh my gosh, Brandon Cooks, he's such an average receiver that a star like Anthony Miller is going to come and completely destroy Brandon Cooks' fantasy value, which, that's a great take. But I don't care about the Texans at all. What I do care about is that Darnell Mooney is about to rocket to the goddamn moon because he is locked in as the Bears' number 2 wide receiver. I'm sure you've seen this video going around. There are clips of Darnell Mooney just absolutely roasting corners last year and then getting the ball overthrown by like 15 yards because Mitchell Trubisky and Nick Foles absolutely are garbage at the sport. And so with this locked in role at number 2 alongside Allen Robinson with a good quarterback in Justin Fields, who I think is going to start for the vast majority of Chicago, for the Bears, Darnell Mooney, this to me is huge for Darnell Mooney into 2021 fantasy wise. Anthony Miller in Houston, humbug. Who cares about that?
So I'm just going to start by giving myself props. You might have found, if you read me regularly last year, you would have found Darnell Mooney's name mentioned frequently in the rundown. Most of the time saying, shit, I don't think you can start him, but he sure looks good. This does elevate him. I'm still a little afraid of the Bears front office. I mean, they did this because the owner is angry with Anthony Miller. He got mad at Anthony Miller for a couple of performances and demanded that the front office trade him. This is a lot different when an owner says, I demand that you find me a quarterback. I don't like it, but I get it. But if your thing is, I am angry with this maybe number 3 receiver on our team who's like
slot
really
receiver,
promising. Yeah. I mean, Miller, he's got all the talent. It's been tough for him to put it together. So I like Mooney. Go draft him late. As far as Anthony Miller and the Texans goes, Brandon Cooks, long history of concussions. He's a very good football player. He's playing on what is basically an expansion team. The Houston Texans, this is the worst roster in the NFL. by a Houston country mile, and now they're probably not even going to have Deshaun Watson. I will go so far as to say that I don't think that Deshaun Watson is going to play in Houston this year. I don't want anything to do with like anybody on the Texans. There you go.
That's fair.
Yeah, my understanding with Miller is super talented guy, went later than he should, and kind of struggled with the Bears because of a bit of a knucklehead factor. I don't know if that's true, but that's what people report. And apparently, if he's getting shipped out of Chicago because the owner doesn't like him, well, there you go. Favorite part about that story, Texans still gave up a 5th-round pick for it. So I feel like someone, or that's what's being reported right now as of the recording of this podcast. So, knowing that they had to move them, the Texans were still so generous that they were like, no, not 7th-round pick swap like you see with players who are definitely going to be leaving. We'll give you a 5th. Just
so courteous.
Keeps on giving. We may debate this later. I think Cooks is, borderline wide receiver 2 this year, even if Tyrod Taylor is playing, just because he's the best thing going right now. But I'm not going to die on the hill that Brandon Cooks is, the next T.Y. Hilton. He's very good and he's fantasy worthy and he's free, so you should take him. But I don't want to spend 40 minutes talking about Brandon Cooks catching balls from Tyrod Taylor this year.
He'll come later in the show. All right, well, there's the news for you guys. Before we go on to wide receiver chatter, I want to quickly let you know that we do have a Patreon, patreon.com/nerdballff, and we offer all kinds of perks for those who subscribe. We got a Discord channel to talk football once the season starts, around the clock starts and sit advice, play in a league with us this year, and all kinds of goodies for those who join us. Plus, during the season, we want to have a mailbag session to the podcast where we answer your questions in real time. So if you want to make sure your most pressing questions are answered on the show, support us over at Patreon, patreon.com/nerdballff. All right, let's talk wide receivers. The position that I care the most about in fantasy football, unsurprisingly, it's because I do the rankings, but this is a position where every year of recent years, I find that it's just like there is so much depth at this position. And yes, there are those top echelon guys, but it is really easy to build a narrative for guys going well into the wide receiver 30s, the wide receiver 40s, going in those later rounds. So there is a lot of guys to talk about here. We, of course, have 4 categories to get into our wide receiver deep dive. We have our top wide receiver target going in the first 3 rounds. Top wide receiver target going in the 9th round or later. A wide receiver we're avoiding this year based on their ADP. Spoiler alert, guess who Nick picked for this show. And 1 bold prediction for the position. So let's start with the big spenders. And Nick, why don't you start us off? Who's your big spender this year?
Now my wide receiver 2 for the year, Stephon Diggs. So broke this team down in a couple different articles and a podcast last week with Clark.
Nerding out with Nick Bodiford. Listen to it every Thursday. You got to plug it, Nick. If you're gonna refer to it, you got to plug it.
You're right.
You got to tell the people where to find it.
You're right. The Bills last year showed us how they want to run their offense. They had a really middle of the road schedule, not too easy, not too hard. We're talking both offenses and defenses that they faced. They threw the ball at the 2nd highest rate on first half early downs in the league, 64% of the time, and just only behind Kansas City. They swapped out, or they let John Brown leave. They brought in Emmanuel Sanders. I've already broken down that I think Gabe Davis is number 2, blah, blah, blah. But the point is they are a heavy throw first team, a pass first team. Stephon Diggs, this was in their first year together. Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. He did what he did. He finished as the half-point PPR wide receiver 3. And he did what he did with no training camp and no preseason. That's extremely impressive. Now that they've had a full year to build rapport, I think sky's the limit. I think the only guy who can take the top spot from him is Devontae Adams. Diggs right now is going as 2.02 or 2.03, just beginning of the 2nd round. If you can get him, you're looking at 1,400, 1,500 yards and a shot at 10 touchdowns. And we're just only talking standard scoring. He could catch 100 passes. It's going to be really hard for most fantasy assets to outproduce Stephon Diggs. I think he should be a 1st-round pick.
Yeah, Stephon Diggs currently, I haven't updated with the Devontae Adams news, but Stephon Diggs is currently my wide receiver 1 this year in my rankings. And he is the going at the top end of the second round. If you have, this is what I said this a couple shows ago where it's like, I might throw my draft, how we pick our draft rankings in one of my leagues so that I make sure I get one of the last picks. Because goddamn, tell me how excited would you be to start your team with at the 111 Austin Eckler and then the 202 Stephon Diggs? You'd be set for life. That's gorgeous. How can you say no to that? His situation, nothing really has changed. He is the clear-cut wide receiver 1. The only thing that's changed is that he's going to get more connected with Josh Allen. They're going to become better together. It's a clear, great guy who you will spend a high pick to get, but he will pay out as long as he is on the field.
Yeah, I agree with everything y'all said. Just one additional note. 168 targets, 127 catches, 1,535 yards, and 8 touchdowns. The wide receiver 2, Tyreek Hill, had 15 touchdowns. Devontae Adams' historic season, 18 touchdowns. So just a tiny, tiny bit of luck. Stephon Diggs can get into the wide receiver 1 territory. It's taken me a while to come around on this one, but hyper stable situation and just a tiny bit of touchdown luck, and he's right there.
Yeah, just a increase in touchdown dependency, and he is a wide receiver 1, no problem this year, or the wide receiver 1, no problem this year. My big spender for the wide receiver position is Allen Robinson, the perpetually underrated and the remarkably consistent wide receiver for the Chicago Bears. In seasons in which Allen Robinson has played at least 13 games in his career, there have been 4 seasons. 2015, he had 151 targets. 2016, he had 151 targets. 2019, he had 154 targets. In 2020, he had 151 targets. So the man is wildly consistent with the workload that he's going to get, and that's between the Jaguars and the Bears. This year he was the wide receiver 12 in half-point PPR. Last year, the wide receiver 11, and that was playing with Mitchell Trubisky and Nick Foles and whatever other garbage quarterback might have taken a snap in 2019. Mitchell Trubisky was the 64th deep passer per PFF last year out of 71 quarterbacks. He was absolutely garbage. And even if you don't think, Clark, that Justin Fields is going to step in and be remarkable from the get-go, he is certainly an upgrade over Mitchell Trubisky, certainly an upgrade over Nick Foles. Hell, Andy Dalton is an upgrade over Mitchell Trubisky in my book. And so with seeing the best quarterback play that he has seen throughout his career, Allen Robinson, who's been a perpetual wide receiver 1, is now going to take a step even further into that wide receiver 1 category. I have him ranked as my wide receiver 7. He is being drafted as a wide receiver 12, going in let me find your round for you. It is...
He is 312, according to Fantasy Football Calculator's half-point PPR.
Thank you. So I fringe right at the end of that 3rd round, just so I could sneak him into the big spender segment. I've long loved Allen Robinson, and I think this is the year that all of the general populace realizes just how good Allen Robinson is when he has a quarterback who can actually get him the football.
Yep.
Yeah. I agree. Robinson's really good. And then I'll use this to transition to my guys. So I was looking at the wide receivers I like, and man, all the guys at the top, sometimes you look at ADP, like I look at ADP with running backs, and I'm just very different from consensus. I don't think that ADP for running backs is very good right now. And that's one of the reasons I had a hard time picking out which wide receiver I would spend a 2nd, 3rd, or 1st round pick on, because the way that things are shaping out, my 4th running back, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, has an ADP of 2.06. So I'm not picking anybody ahead of Clyde Edwards-Helaire in that 2nd round. So I love Stephon Diggs. I love Devontae Adams, but I have too many running backs that I want. I think that's a more scarce position. So I went with DK Metcalf as my big spender because he's at 2.08. Huge rookie year for where he was taken. Came back in his sophomore season and just blew his rookie year out of the water. Same team. The only changes that we're seeing from the Seahawks is that they brought in a new offensive coordinator tied to Sean McVay. So the hopefuls for Seattle are thinking, Pete Carroll realizes that when Russell Wilson was playing really well and throwing the ball, that the Seahawks were very good. Maybe we should get an offensive coordinator that can come in and, really accentuate that part of our offense. DK Metcalf, just a giant of a man, runs a lot faster than everyone else. And the way I like to look at things, when you're doing your pre-draft work for your leagues of record, I always like to look at okay, I'm picking at the 104. What's the worst case scenario that I have to take my fourth guy? And then coming back in the second round, you look at what's your worst case scenario of, who am I going to take at the, 18th, 19th pick? Well, DK Metcalf fits in right there. If all my running backs are gone and I'm staring at DK Metcalf in that spot, I am just over the moon with that one.
Mm-hmm. His value, his ADP has definitely dropped. I remember early in this offseason, he was going as the wide receiver 4, I think at one point, and that was way too rich for me. Wide receiver 6 is still a little rich for me. But I have grown. I know, Nick, you were saying today that you've warmed up even more to the Seahawks passing game than maybe I have, but I think the DK Metcalf has all the physical ability to be the wide receiver 1, to be one of those reliably top 5 week in, week out guys. I don't know if I trust the offense enough to make him that in terms of Pete Carroll's play calling. But you make a great point, Clark. You're bringing in an offensive coordinator from the McVay system, which has turned out regularly. Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp have regularly been huge fantasy contributors in that offense because of what Sean McVay has done with Jared Goff. And now Russell Wilson's obviously a vastly superior quarterback than that. So would I be surprised if DK Metcalf was a top 5 fantasy wide receiver this year and regularly was, in that top 5 ranking week to week? Not at all. Am I going to draft him at the middle or end of the second round? Probably not. But if he falls to the beginning of the third, if I can get 2 running backs and I get DK as my wide receiver 1 at the third, yes, I'm in. That is the value that I see him more at, but I can't disagree with your reasoning there, Clark.
So I can't speak highly enough about the guys who run the fantasy football hustle. And I have to credit Dwayne McFarland and his pace of play work on single-handedly turning my opinion of the Seahawks around as of late. Shane Waldron is not going to have the Seahawks pass at the same rate that Brian Schottenheimer had them throw at for the first half of last year. But what he is going to do is he's going to crank up the overall number of plays that the Seahawks produce every week. The last 3 years, the Rams play total has ranked 3, 8, and 5. So they just run a lot of plays. And so even if you're running a little inefficiently, meaning you're running the ball too much on first half early downs, if you're just running a crap ton of plays, those points are going to still remain on the board. It's another way to basically find fantasy success. They do implement analytics in the LA Rams coaching department. I mean, they run a lot in the red zone and everything, but the way that the school of thought that Waldron was brought up in is basically run the defense ragged by running a bunch of plays. That's way different than the traditional kind of offense that Pete Carroll wants to run of let's burn the clock as much as we can and just run the ball on early downs. I think this is kind of how Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson solve their problem. They're still going to run the football a lot more than Russell Wilson wants to, certainly more than I want them to, but they're also going to throw a lot because they're just going to run a lot more plays than they have in the last few years. So I brought DK Metcalf up from wide receiver 15 to wide receiver 9 today. I think that he's a very good value at the back end of the second round.
Nice.
And just for fun, how fun would it be if AJ Brown and DK Metcalf were wide receiver 1, 2, and 1, 3? That Ole Miss wide receiver combo that had so many questions. I'm using air quotes for the podcast listeners. God, Ole Miss. Who did they have playing quarterback? That's got to be shameful.
No one.
Not since Jarvis Landry and Odell played for LSU.
Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase also, weren't they both at LSU at the same time?
Yeah, but Joe Burrow.
Joe Burrow's good.
Pretty good.
Joe Burrow's good at football. It's true. But yeah, where you have a situation where you have 2 elite wide receivers and a quarterback who I can't certainly name off the top of my head. Yeah, DK Metcalf and AJ Brown might be the starting point of like the Ole Miss wide receiver school.
It's Jordan Te'amu.
There you
Yeah,
go.
the quarterback.
Wasn't he on the Lions for a hot second? I feel like he was on the Lions practice squad for. I think I only know this because of Madden, and I saw him there, but I could be wrong. Who knows? All right. Well, those are some top guys. But what if I want to look for some value shopping? Well, then we should go.
Hey, Knuckle Ward, can we go thrift shopping?
Yes, we can, adorable girl. We will go thrift shopping. And I will start us off with a wide receiver who I am just constantly blown away by his current ADP. Corey Davis is going wide receiver 50 in the 11th round, despite clearly being New York Jets' number one wide receiver, walking into 120 plus targets, leaving behind the red zone touch stealer Derrick Henry, and joining an offense that throws the ball more than it runs in the red zone, going behind Jalen Waddle, Curtis Samuel, Laviska Shenault. How is this? How is this happening? How can I get a perennial wide receiver one, or like at the very least wide receiver two in the 11th round? Someone explain it to me. He's my wide receiver 25 this year. I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that he finishes at least a top 30 wide receiver in fantasy. And I don't understand why there is this trepidation about him to the point where he is going wide receiver 50.
Yeah, I think it's a value, and he carries a lot of the same or similar hallmarks of someone else who I am not really excited about, but pressing the draft button on, with Brashad Perryman as the wide receiver one for the Lions. And the reason no one's excited about it is because it's like the world's tallest midget being the Jets wide receiver one. It's like, well, sure, you're the wide receiver one.
The Jets, but
for the Jets.
I also think that this is going to be, I think if you, dear listeners, here's my fantasy advice for you. Draft Jets players, because I think the stink of Adam Gase is still in everyone's nostrils, and no one's realizing that it's fucking Mike LaFleur from the 49ers offense, which is going to bring over this highly explosive, highly efficient offense that we have seen turn, Jimmy Garoppolo into a decent quarterback, has made Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, any running back that you put in 49ers territory, everyone's excited about. Like, this is not the Adam Gase offense, and I think people are still terrified by that. And so I am going to draft every Jets offensive player at a discount this year and gleefully giggle my way to them all wildly outperforming their ADPs. And I think next year, once we've seen a year of what Mike LaFleur and Robert Saleh's offense looks like, I think you're going to see a boost in all of Jets players. So I don't understand it. And I think that you should be buying every Jets player that you can at the discount, because it's not going to be here. That discount's not going to be here next year.
Yeah, I'm with you, Pete. Corey Davis, I got him as the wide receiver 23 this year in the updated ranks that have not come out yet. Volume will be king, I think. He's basically duking it out with a rookie in Elijah Moore, and Keelan Cole. Denzel Mims is basically like, he's out. The coaching staff didn't draft him. They don't want him. I don't think that he has to be especially good to really like produce. I don't think that he's going to be a wide receiver one. I think that he'll produce sometimes as a wide receiver two, but where you're getting him, you can put him as like your primary flex or a multi-flex play. Yep. And I think that that's awesome. I think, I think I've got him. I think the guy will finish right on that high end flex, low end wide receiver two borderline. And that's like, at the wide receiver 50, the value that's excellent value, and we should all be excited about that. Yeah,
it's insane value.
It is the type of shot you want to take when 100%. The wide receiver one is ranked so low. That's a good bet. I mean, it's cost versus what you're getting. No, I don't think you're saying you think Corey Davis is one of the 10 best wide receivers in the league. You're saying he's in round 14. It's probably the best deal going.
Oh my God. Yeah. 100%. Clark, you are also high on a wide receiver one for an offense that people are sleeping on.
This is not as bold as yours. You took Allen Robinson at 312 to barely squeeze into the big spender. Yes. I took Will Fuller at the 9.01 to barely squeeze into the bargain shoppers. Pretty simple analysis here. We were worried that Will Fuller couldn't get through a season and that he couldn't be a number one wide receiver. He showed that he could do that in 2020. He was the wide receiver, I think, like, I have notes. I should look at them. He was like the wide receiver 12 or 13 in points per game before his suspension started for performance-enhancing drugs. Good to note that he will still serve one game of that suspension to start this season. But I'm all in on the Dolphins improving as a team and Tua Tagovailoa improving as a quarterback. While I like a lot of the weapons in Miami, and that's one of the reasons I like that team so much, I think Will Fuller is clearly the best wide receiver on that team. So getting a number one wide receiver on what I think is an ascending offense with an ascending quarterback at 901 or in the 8th round, I think is just a bargain that you can't pass up.
Yeah. Will Fuller, through the weeks that he played last year, was the wide receiver 5 in total points and half point PPR. So like we know how good he is, how explosive he is. And he's joining this offense with Devontae Parker and with Jalen Waddle to build, and Mike Gesicki, to build like a really explosive, what could be a really explosive passing attack. And I don't think it's crazy to say that Will Fuller is the clear number one guy there. Like, I think he's going to see the most targets. He's going to see, or at least see the most impact targets. Like maybe, Mike Gesicki or Devontae Parker get more looks, but like Will Fuller is going to be their guy that they're going to try to make the big play happen with, because that's what he does. So I think him going in the 9th round is great. Like that's another solid. And this is what I was saying earlier about the wide receiver position, where it's like, there's so many guys here where you can make that narrative where it's like, this guy could be a wide receiver too. It's one of these things where it's like, man, it's hard for me to just not justify, but like, it is very easy for me to like think of his draft strategy this year of going running back, tight end, even maybe quarterback, and then addressing wide receiver in like the 4th or 5th round, because there's just so many good guys there that I think you can build a narrative for being top producers for you.
So during Tua's starts last year from like week 11 or 3 to 11, and he missed game 7 or something, the Dolphins threw the ball just under 60% or 58% of the time on first half early downs. We like that a lot. We like our receivers to get to play against some base run defenses. That's terrific. The downside with Tua is that he might end up just being the downfield threat with Devontae Parker operating as the X, but he did show us last year that he can play X, and not only can he play it really friggin' well. Taking a guy who could be the team's X receiver in a well-run offense, and I broke this down in the AFC East piece. The Dolphins schedule, they face a lot of good passing offenses and bad passing defenses. This makes for good game script. You are going to get into shootouts. We like good game script. The downsides that I just addressed, if that's all that there is for your 9th round pick, you're sitting pretty. That's great.
Yeah. Nick, if I were so inclined, if I wanted to know more about your thoughts on the AFC East, where could I find that article?
You can go to nerdball.ff.com and you can look up the I don't have the title in front of me,
Nick,
but
Nick,
it's the AFC East preview
Nick,
piece.
It's nerdballff.com. Learn your own damn site.
No, it's okay. Anyway, go to nerdballff.com.
There it is.
Search that shit.
Well done, Nick. All right. Nick, you go. You have a guy. Actually, I really want to hear your point on this thrift shop buy, because I am not as sold, but sell me on him.
Okay, so mine is Laviska Shenault, and he is going in a place that I forgot, so I'm looking that
10th
up. He's
round,
going at
4th pick, wide receiver 45.
Yeah, and so that's that's so similar to if you got Will Fuller and then came back and got Shenault right back to back. That is awesome.
And then Corey Davis.
Yeah, seriously, actually. So Shenault, I was really concerned about him because he was supposed to be this slasher play. He was supposed to be a wide receiver who took like 100 snaps out of the backfield, and that was going to be wonderful. They've instead moved him to full-time receiver. And okay, so now the question is, can he play full-time receiver? Well, he was the head turner of Jacksonville Jaguars training camp. He was the guy who kept making headlines, and like his physical ability is phenomenal. He's not missing any pieces. Like he's not limited physically in any capacity. He played very well as a rookie last year. And the coach came in, and the first thing he said to DJ Chark is that you're a big receiver who's playing small, gain more weight. That's not a ringing endorsement, right? The first thing he did was he critiqued the guy and made him change his physical appearance. DJ Chark has looked great at times in his career, but he's really only, quote unquote, done it, as Patrick Corain has highlighted for a few months now. He's only ever done it once. We are all, or for whatever reason, the drafting public are putting all of their chips on DJ Chark as being the team's X receiver, when Laviska Shenault, his capabilities are that he can play this position. They're going to be in a camp battle, and if he looks better, Urban Meyer has no connection to any of these players. If someone is not good enough for him, he's going to cast them aside. He's already shown that he likes things the way that he likes them.
Some would say Urban Meyer has very little connection to reality.
Yeah, but the rest of us will also say that he's the head coach of a team and he's going to put people out there. I mean, I think he's a buffoon. I think he's going to run the ball a lot, but we're talking about a potential number one receiver for what we all think, I think, is a very good quarterback prospect. Taking him in the 10th round as a wide receiver 45, I mean, you could get a top 24 player here. So I'm very high on Laviska Shenault.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I think you made a really good point there. He was clearly the standout in Jags camp, and I think that because of the role that people kind of anticipated for him coming into it, that he still has this moniker of like gadget player, which he's not. He is a legit wide receiver and can play the X and can do all that. So if he does get that role, he will thrive and succeed in it. DJ Chark is going in the end of the seventh round, 8th pick, wide receiver 31 in half point PPR. Those are still kind of close enough to me that I feel like I can take my pick there. But like you said, people seem to be pushing their chips to DJ Chark. He seems to be the more likely one that people are going to overdraft. And so if that ADP sneaks up into like the 6th round by the time we're actually picking at the end of August, then yes, Laviska Shenault seems like the preferable running wide receiver of the two to take out of the Jaguars.
Yeah, so Shenault didn't just look good in Jags camp. You know, last year when Shenault got on the play and got a lot of playing time, he did that thing where you see an athlete amongst athletes. You see the guy running around, and you're like, oh crap, that guy's like really big and fast compared to people you know are the biggest, fastest people on the planet. So that's a checkbox that you can't, or that I don't know how to tease out with analytics, is when you watch him play. It's like Alvin Kamara never looks like he's running hard, but always seems to be running past people. It's just one of those weird things that you can tease out. And with Urban Meyer, he's stuck in a time where you just pay a couple of guys who are the ultimate athletes to dominate your opponents. And he's been looking for those guys by, trying to draft Kadarius Toney, and then trying to, turn Travis Etienne into the guy that Laviska Shenault is. Yeah. And in the NFL, you don't have gadget players, you have wide receivers. And Laviska Shenault showed last year that he can do that. When I talked earlier about Corey Davis being like the kind of shot that you like to take, I should say the kind of shot that I like to take. Like, he has been established. He is the, wide receiver one. This is the other type of shot that you take in the 10th round. Whereas I don't think that Corey Davis is going to be in the top 10 of wide receivers this year. I think that there is a world where that exists, but there's like 2 million of them where he doesn't do that. Laviska Shenault is the kind of wide receiver who could finish as the, wide receiver 40 because the Jaguars are just terrible. Or if he gets 120 targets, he's going to be inside the top 10 just because of the talent that he has and because Trevor Lawrence is good enough to make that happen. So super boom busty play, but that is, juxtaposed against your 10th round pick. Right. Like, that's another way to do it. And Shenault is very
yeah. No, that's you guys making some good Shenault points, some good Shenault points.
And that's, I love DJ Chark and have fallen in love and will be in love for forever. But Shenault is, God, he looks like AJ Brown does when he's running around out there. Of like, oh, he's a bigger athlete.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Similar to the group mentioned before, very good pass offenses expected to be bad pass defenses.
Yeah. Yeah. Love it. All right, let's move on to wide receivers we are avoiding. No, sir. And Nick, why don't you start us off, because I think you will have the most, well, Clark's going to have some highlights to come to us at debates too, but you start us off, Nick.
I already covered this in like earlier in the show. I don't want anything to do with Brandon Cooks. A lot of concussions. He now has a good player that he has to compete with. If the roster is terrible in Houston and they probably don't have a quarterback. I mean, you might be playing with Tyrod Taylor, and Taylor was good like 4 or 5 years ago. Maybe they're going to move on to Davis Mills. I think it's a really ugly situation, and like, yeah, I don't want anything to do with any of these players. I don't want anything to do with any.
Okay, Clark, would you like to first go at this?
Well, yeah, the case for it is he's a wide receiver 1 at the 909, right? So 9th round, he's the wide receiver 1. That doesn't take everything Nick said is true. Injury history. He's a smaller guy, does not like to go across the middle, which can't blame him. Yeah. Not a one-trick pony, but, kind of limited skill set at the 9th round. I'm willing to take that shot, but I'm not going to die on the hill for.
Yeah. We've talked about Brandon Cooks before because he's such a weird player in the sense that he's played for so many different teams in the last couple of years and yet has performed very well in all those situations. Now, to your point, Nick, in all those situations, he has had Drew Brees, Tom Brady, Jared Goff for one good year, and Deshaun Watson. And now you're playing in a offense that presumably is going to have Tyrod Taylor under center and not, intelligent, probably coaching staff, to say the least, in terms of their offensive scheme. I think similarly to the DJ Chark conversation, at the 9th round, I love Brandon Cooks enough that I will probably still draft him there. But if that ADP continues to rise, if we see stuff coming out of camp during August that Brandon Cooks is the clear-cut wide receiver 1, or that Deshaun Watson is going to play and the Texans aren't going to trade him and that, rockets him up, or Tyrod Taylor looks great, whatever the situation might be. If that ADP goes into the 7th round or 6th round, and I now have to spend kind of a middle pick on him, if he's going around the level of Cortland Sutton in the middle of the 7th, or Devonta Smith or Brandon Ayuk in the 6th, yeah, then I'm going to pass on Brandon Cooks for sure.
So yeah, by the same token, if Brandon Cooks were to fall 4 rounds, then I'm sure, go for it. But just speaking within a round of where he's going at 909. Again, Will Fuller, 901. Michael Pittman, 904. Taking both of those guys. I would take Jarvis Landry at 911. I would take Antonio Brown at 1001. I'd flip a coin on Curtis Samuel at 1003. I'm taking Laviska Shenault at 1004. I'm taking Marquise Brown at 1008. And if we stretch it even further, I will take Mike Williams at 1101. I'm only looking at wide receivers there. I prefer all of those guys to Cooks at cost.
That's fair. That is very fair. Clark, who are you avoiding this year as a wide receiver?
Yeah, so much like how
and Nick why do you hate me?
Much like how Nick is determined not taking Brandon Cooks because of who's around him, for me it's Terry McLaurin. And this is not an impugnation of McLaurin's talent or how good the Washington football team could be this year, but there is a lot of risk involved with Terry McLaurin when going after him is your boy, Pete, Allen Robinson, CeeDee Lamb, Julio Jones, Mike Evans, Amari Cooper. I am not going to take a chance on Terry McLaurin to outperform those guys. At 309, it's a little rich. You give me a 1-round discount and I'm there and I'm excited for it, but there's just too many pieces moving for me to go up and take Terry McLaurin, this is not me being rude. I shouldn't come across that way, but do you see how Terry McLaurin is the wide receiver 5? Well, I see how Allen Robinson is. I see how CeeDee Lamb is. I see how Mike Evans is. And I don't think McLaurin has that much upside this year to be going that high.
I see how Terry McLaurin could be the wide receiver 5, but I agree with you that Allen Robinson, Mike Evans, Keenan Allen, who's going a couple picks ahead of Terry McLaurin, certainly, all have a clearer path. Terry McLaurin, I have him as my wide receiver 10 this year, and I will wholeheartedly admit 2 things. 1, I love Terry McLaurin to a fault, and 2, I am firmly on the bandwagon that Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to throw YOLO balls to him and he's going to end up with 1,500 yards and 12 touchdowns. Will that happen? Probably not. But that's the universe I'm choosing to operate in. So for me, if you buy it, the narrative is there that you can buy it and you're just yes. Remember when Devontae Parker went absolutely crazy in fantasy? And it was because of Ryan Fitzpatrick. Could that happen with Terry McLaurin? Yes, he's so talented, and Ryan Fitzpatrick is the perfect quarterback to kind of take advantage if he plays that YOLO ball. However, That's a lot of faith on a quarterback who's been around the league and maybe doesn't either isn't going to throw that YOLO ball anymore because he's actually a starter for a team and is not coming in to just like be replacement, or can't throw that YOLO ball anymore. Or just, I was super high on Terry McLaurin last year too, and he turned out to be a wide receiver 20 because, Washington's passing game just wasn't as explosive or as dynamic as maybe we had anticipated. So I certainly agree with you, Clark, that of Keenan Allen, Terry McLaurin, Allen Robinson, CeeDee Lamb, I might add in there as well. He has the most risk to him.
Yeah, I think he's fine at cost, and you can split hairs and get some of the other guys ahead of him. I moved him down just a couple spots today, but I think like he's gonna be a high end wide receiver 2, and he's gonna bounce into the wide receiver 1 ranks from time to time. I think I've got him at wide receiver 15 right now. Yeah. I think he's a good bet to finish right around 15.
And I feel like, to your point, Clark, that puts him at like the middle to end of the 4th round, and that's exactly where you take him. So
we'll have to talk about this during quarterback week, but I have thought, since being forced to watch Ryan Fitzpatrick play for the Texans for so long, that Ryan Fitzpatrick is actually pretty good. He's not fantastic, but he's pretty good. And he is kind of the bizarro world Derek Carr, whereas when it's 3rd and 15, Ryan Fitzpatrick is throwing the ball for 17 plus yards. And if he gets an interception because his team's down 20 points, well, who cares? Whereas Derek Carr puts up great passing percentages, and he throws for 4 yards on 3rd and 17 when his team's down by 15. The point being, I think Washington's going to be pretty good. So we may not see the gunslinging Ryan Fitzpatrick a la of necessity that we've seen when he played with horrible teams. We may see more of the like sort of conservative Ryan Fitzpatrick that we saw with the good Dolphins team last year.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. All right, wrapping up the wide receivers we're avoiding. Adam Thielen is my guy this year. I will have absolutely no Adam Thielen shares. I have written a lot about this over at nerdballff.com, so make sure you go read it. But just the Cliff Notes version. Justin Jefferson obviously emerged last year, and with that emergence, to me, Adam Thielen then is a boomer bust touchdown dependent player for 2021. Jefferson averaged 10.1 targets and 6.8 catches from week 10 onwards last year. Thielen during that time, 7.1 targets and 5.3 catches. The point being there that Jefferson cemented himself as that wide receiver 1 in a Vikings passing tree, which doesn't offer that much outside of a number 1 target with, obviously running the ball in Dalvin Cook. But last year Adam Thielen had the highest touchdown dependency amongst wide receivers at 38.7%, which means almost 40% of his fantasy points last year came from touchdowns, which he had 14 of. Good for him. Third in the NFL last year. 5 more than his previous career high, which was 9, which then I think is like 3 more than his previous career. So like, it was an astronomically wildly good performance for him in a touchdown scoring. Had Thielen scored 9 touchdowns last year, he would have dropped to the wide receiver 19 as opposed to the wide receiver. What does he have? Wide receiver last year. He was top wide receiver 8 last year. And that's where he's being drafted right now, is the wide receiver 19. That's still way too rich. I'm happy to have him as my wide receiver 3 or wide receiver 4, but there's no way in hell I'm drafting him as a top 20 receiver in fantasy this year with all of his production coming from touchdowns, in my opinion.
Yeah, a lot of competition in an offense that generally the Shanahan Kubiak offense, Gary Kubiak's son is taking over as offensive coordinator for the Vikings. Widely expected that he's going to run the same offense as his dad. Who knows if he'll be as good.
What if just to spite him, he's like, "Fuck you, Dad! I'm gonna run a pass first. We're gonna go air raid
spread,
exactly."
Anyway, point being, Adam Thielen's had a good career with Kirk Cousins. Justin Jefferson is not doing himself any favors talking about how he wants Kellen Mond to be the starters. Please, for Justin Jefferson fantasy GM shareholders, please don't do that. Thielen's good, but Jefferson showed those were not fluke plays. Jefferson is very, very good, and there's not a ton of room on that team. Even last year, when both of these wide receivers were viable, it was a lot of up and down, one guy having a big game when the other doesn't, and that's kind of a natural consequence, but I would rather bet on Jefferson than Thielen. And then to drive the point home, where he's going, that's when I look at my draft. Like Lamar Jackson is available right there. Dak Prescott's available right there. Mark Andrews is there. If you've missed on your strategy somewhere, would you rather have Adam Thielen or Dak Prescott? You know, he's just not. Thielen's just not going to end up on a lot of my teams either.
Yep. Nick,
at cost, it's probably going to be kind of hard for him to. There's the dog awakening. It's probably going to be a little bit difficult for him to return value. It's tough though, like depending on what kind of construction you're doing, I don't hate it. If you take Jefferson and then you come back and you grab Thielen and draft Kirk Cousins around early, like
stacking their offense.
I can see
8.5% of every team in Minnesota is going to.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like I mean, you're talking about every Minnesotan fantasy football team strategy.
What is nice though about this condensed passing tree is that like there's going to be 2 guys that go over 100 targets, and then that's kind of it. In the last few years, I'm just looking over there, like the way that the targets have been dispersed. It's 2 big guys at the top, and then a third player who gets like some, typically a tight end. After that, though, there's not like a lot to write home about. I think that Thielen will. At the end of the year, I wouldn't be surprised if he finishes as a back end wide receiver 2, just in like pure counting stats. There might be some down weeks, but he's going to be an extremely high floor player.
You want to wheel bet that?
I will wheel bet whatever I have in terms of my rankings. Yeah, let me see. So I've got him as the wide receiver 29. I will bet you that he finishes inside the top 30.
Top 30. I have him as my wide receiver 38. Sure, I'll take it.
Okay. Actually,
this is like,
fair, we should split the difference.
This is like my mother-in-law at the Mexican food restaurant level spicy, which is like none spicy. Avoid dishes because of bell peppers.
I like the wide receiver 2 that Nick was referring to. That is a lot spicier than wide receiver than top 30. We'll finish top 30 wide receiver. Nick and Pete. All right, let's wrap up the show with our final segment, our bold predictions, where we like to get rocked. Bert's ready to get rocked. I will start us off with a bold prediction, and it is a bold prediction about the Bengals offense, and that is Jamar Chase will have more touchdowns than T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd combined. I cemented myself on the Jamar Chase hype train today when I dropped my wide receiver rankings. He's my wide receiver 16. I locked that in. Can't change it now. Tyler Boyd had 4 touchdowns last year. Higgins had 6 touchdowns last year. I just got to get double digits and I'm there. As long as, Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins don't get more touchdowns than they did last year. Mainly this is just to say that I think while both Tyler Boyd and while there's enough work to go around in the Bengals offense for all of them to get a lot of targets and for them to get a lot of work, I am really in my mind, again, like the Terry McLaurin, Ryan Fitzpatrick connection. I am just putting all of my chips in the middle of the Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, lit the world on fire in LSU together, and now they're going to do that in Cincinnati. That's the narrative I'm running with, and I will draft all pieces accordingly.
I'll take the board bet.
Well,
spicy.
It's a bold prediction, Nick. And for the record, I deleted my bold prediction that I took a wheel bet on with you about Najee Harris. So no wheel bets on bold predictions, Nick. They're bold. Gosh. Clark, what's your bold prediction?
Mine's less bold. I think most would say it's less bold. Nelson Aguilar is going to be a wide receiver 2 for fantasy this year. He's the wide receiver 1 on the Patriots, and he's absolutely free. He's 1406. And the counting, we always talk about counting stats, and I get it because it gives you a reference point for how the season went. But I try to think of things in terms of if things go sort of how we think that they're going to, what's your weekly rank going to be for that player? And if the Patriots offense is not the abomination that it was last year and sort of moves the football, whether it's Cam Newton or Mac Jones, Nelson Aguilar is going to be a projected starter for you. And he's absolutely free. It's a boring pick, but it's why you can pick a quarterback early. It's why you can pick a tight end early, because there's guys like Nelson Aguilar available in the 14th round.
I mean, hey, as a Patriots fan, if Nelson Aguilar is putting up wide receiver 2 fantasy numbers week to week, I am here for it. 100% sold.
Yeah, I think this is super bold. Like, congratulations, man. This is crazy bold. I think that Nelson Aguilar will be a matchup-based flex play. I think he'll finish outside of the top 30 at the receiver position if you would like to board or spinner wheel that shit. Nope. Moving on to the next one.
That's you, Nick. You're the next one.
Right. So the next one is that Mike Williams is going to finish inside the top 25 of the position, something he's only done once in his 4-year career. There are recent reports indicating that are stating that he's going to play, per the coaching staff, the Mike Williams, or excuse me, yeah, he will play the Mike Williams role, the Michael Thomas X receiver role. I think that they're probably overstating what they're going to do with him to some degree, because I think that Keenan Allen is like the natural carbon copy guy to take that role on. But it would be big if what this coaching staff did was choose to not just use him as a like pure downfield threat. In 2019, he averaged the highest targeted air yards on a per target basis, 17.4. Last year he was in the mid 15s, which I think was inside the top 10. He's basically just been this big body downfield guy. I do think that they're going to use him closer to the line of scrimmage. I think that this coaching staff is brilliant. They are analytically inclined. I think that they're going to utilize him in a way that he hasn't yet been utilized in his career. Hopefully he learns how to not try to break his fall with his back and instead, catches himself a couple times. But if they just start dialing down his targeted air yards a little bit and don't make him go up for these leaping passes all the goddamn time, I think he's going to be able to stay a lot healthier. So Mike Williams will be better than a top 25 wide receiver. Book it.
Yeah, I like that a lot, especially since Hunter Henry leaving vacates 93 targets and I think 12 red zone targets, which was second on the team just behind Keenan Allen. Mike Williams, 6'4", pretty good red zone target. Seems like he's a natural fit to take some of that work. And we've seen it before where he scores double-digit touchdowns. So I think Mike Williams is a great pick as someone who's going again in that like 8 to 10 rounds or 7 to 10, where he has legit wide receiver 2 upside. So I think that's a great. Was he going?
1101.
1101. Oh my God.
11.
Wow, that is absurd. I'm telling you, this wide receiver position it's a fun one. It's a fun one every year, and this year especially. Well, that's all we got for you this week. Please rate and subscribe to the podcast on your podcast platform of choice, and make sure to follow us on Twitter at NerdBallFF. You can follow myself at Pete M. Rogers. Follow Clark at NFL Clark and Nick at Ginger__Nick without a K. And of course, make sure you check out all of the amazing content we're putting out over on the site, nerdballff.com. It is wide receiver week. We're going to have sleepers. We are going to have bold predictions. We're going to have targets, avoids, the whole 9 yards. We will have it there to get you prepared to draft this position successfully and correctly. Until next week, my fellow nerds.